This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.
Back again for the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 87 coming at you. I am Charlie Carden, your Trek Lord of West Michigan, joined by one less companion this week. I do have the fantastic Kae Quinn. Say hello.
Hello. Sorry for everyone who is like, cool, Kate's going to be gone. It's just going to be Peter. But nope, you're stuck with me.
Got it. Yes. Peter is stranded on an away mission. His shuttlecraft went down in Kentucky. No, Peter was away for
Thanksgiving. There's some ion storms, I believe, that's causing some interference on launch.
Right. It must be in Ohio because all kinds of things weird happen in Ohio. But at any rate, yeah, Peter was down for visiting some friends over the Thanksgiving weekend, and there he stayed. So it's just going to be us. Exciting episode. We have two great episodes of Star Trek Prodigy to talk about, and then we are wrapping up season 2 of Star Trek Voyager with no pause in between, which is great. But before I do that, I always want to mention Secret Friends Unite is brought to you in part by the good folks over at manscaped.com. Get 20% off and free shipping at that website with the code SFU, and I'll come back on and chat a little bit more about that later on. So, as mentioned, 2 episodes of Star Trek Prodigy to talk about. Katie, I did put the long form part in here just for because I did actually remember to rewatch them today, because there's so many I'm really going to have to bullshit my way through this because I didn't watch it, but I totally did. I was really right on top of this. Well, it's the holiday weekend, and so I had 4 days off, and I've also been sick, so I'm glad I'm drinking tea out of my very special Mr. Data mug here, and hoping to keep my voice going. But Katie, why don't you do my voice a favor, and you can read the first one, so go for it.
Yeah, so first one we have is Prodigy. This is season 1, episode 14, and it's called Crossroads, and this is the one where after the crew has left the space station that they inadvertently blew up, they figured out there is this deadly, super smart virus weapon thing on the protostar, so they're trying to figure out how to contact Starfleet without contacting Starfleet, and they end up on a they go through a whole thing where they're a transportation hub. They end up meeting some Starfleet officers, but antics ensue because nothing can ever be neat and clean, and they end up in the neutral zone.
I hate it when that happens. This is our first episode where the two crews almost meet. Now, they do end up meeting in the sorts in the next episode that we're going to talk about. But yeah, we're getting some real Starfleet-y kind of stuff. We've got Admiral Janeway, and then obviously we also have just hologram Janeway all the time. But we're getting more fully fleshed out time with Okana and his eye patch, which, I'm sure that's a fun story. Or it's just something that, it was probably like a DJ accident. Because don't you remember, he's also a DJ just a couple of years prior to this on Starbase whatever during that party, that episode of Lower Decks. So yeah, I know. But yeah, I dug this. I thought this was pretty cool. Seeing them run about and doing their stuff. But overall, what did you think of the episode?
I don't generally love the just talk to them, just explain what's going on. That's all you have to do. Just say, hey, yeah, actually, there's a deadly weapon on the protostar that we're trying to stop from getting in track with Starfleet. That's why.
Right. Direct communication.
Yeah, there was that one moment where, the rock girl.
It's just Rock Talk? We'll just call her Rock.
Yeah, Rock, where she says, wait, you all met Starfleet and none of you said anything? I was like, I felt it. I felt that in my soul.
Oh
But
my God. Clear, concise communication. I
yes,
mean, look how far it can get you.
exactly. And I want to know what has caused Janeway to become a little bit more of a hard ass, because the difference between Admiral Janeway and hologram Janeway and like the Captain Janeway that we would get, in Voyager
Right.
are very, very different, because even when she was talking to Dal, she didn't have that warmth to her that you're used to seeing. So I want to know what happened
Right.
to
Right. Yeah, she's
kind of lose that kind of motherly
right.
tenderness, that because she's always had a hard edge to her, but it just
Right.
that kind of gone.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, so we are about 7, 8 years after the end of Voyager, because Voyager
Mm-hmm.
returned in the year. So this is the year for, your real, star date. If you throw the star dates out, because those are always very finite. But if you just think about it in the Julian calendar, the calendar that we follow, because it's 2022 right now. This is taking place, for reference sake, in the year 2384. It's 1 year before the flashback sequences you see in the first season of Picard with the androids on Mars and everything. So it's 1 year before that. And it's about 2 years after the current season of Lower Decks. And then it would be about 5 years after we see Janeway as an admiral in delightful Star Trek Nemesis that we tore up a couple of episodes ago. So you're right. Sometime in between that, who knows what happened in her life in those 5 years. Obviously, not having, Chakotay around, maybe she's really struggling with kind of admitting that, her personal feelings are driving this, and it's a little bit more in friendship and all the JC shippers out there in the world, this is their moment. Because we still don't know where the hell he is. Because everything with the Protostar is so ensconced in mystery. And it was funny when we were talking about the show in the first half of the first season, I didn't even really realize that when the kids find the Protostar on that Tars Lamora, that far-flung world in the Delta Quadrant, it had been sitting there for 20 years.
Yeah.
So does that mean somebody snagged it, dumped Chakotay and his people, and then flew into a wormhole, ended up in the Delta Quadrant 20 years past? I mean, it's a real, how did that really come to pass? So we're no closer to having any idea where the hell Chakotay is. It's the enduring mystery. So, but we get some good starship back and forth, and this episode contained the clip that we saw obviously back on Star Trek Day, where they're all on the bridge and wearing winter coats, and Murph his blastocyst is starting to split, and it finally does, and he pops out, and he's, now we have the equivalent of Grogu or Baby Groot in the Star Trek universe. We have, the baby Murph running around with arms and legs.
A little creepier, in my opinion.
It's a little bit more, from that old book from the 80s, like Communion, the aliens with the big eyeballs and stuff.
Pikmin? Is that the?
Say that again.
Pikmin? It's reminding me of an old video game, PS2, I think.
You are on the wrong. You're on the wrong show, because
okay, that's true.
You're gonna have to shoot a DM to Extra, and I bet he could help you out with that.
Yeah,
but,
I think Pikmin. He reminds me kind of a Pikmin, but without the leaf. Right.
He ends up as we get into the next episode having some very convenient new abilities, but we'll talk about that. So, you do see the starship interaction. The Protostar accidentally fires a torpedo, and then the Dauntless fires back and blows out their third nacelle, which means they can't get to speed. But then they just fly into the neutral zone, and the whole neutral zone thing, and Peter would totally back me up if he was here, but the whole neutral zone part of this into the next episode, and the next episode is episode 15 is Masquerade. The neutral zone is supposed to be exactly that. Neutral meaning nobody is in there. Yet, just across the neutral zone border at the end of episode 14, there's 2 Romulan warbirds. What are they doing there? They're not supposed to be in the zone.
Okay, thank you.
That's what a neutral zone is.
I'm like, wait, I thought that they weren't supposed to be there. I'm like, why is it called the neutral zone if it's just the edge of Romulan space?
Yeah, a neutral zone is, in more contemporary military parlance, would be a demilitarized zone, or place where military vehicles or exercises are not allowed. So that they're borrowing a little bit of, well, the kids won't have any idea about this, but people like us are like, yeah, that's not really what a neutral zone is. More to the point, as we get into episode 15, the and it says right here in the summary, the protostar ventures deeper into the neutral zone, and then Janeway has a conversation with Admiral Jellicoe, which is awesome because we knew that was coming. That's Ronnie Cox's character from the season 6 TNG two-parter, Jan Command. He's the guy that everybody hates, but he's just a very hard-edged officer who just does stuff different than Picard, which is why nobody liked him. So this episode I think it's pretty weird. So they go deeper into the neutral zone where they dock at a science station where there shouldn't be anything because they're in the neutral zone. So we got like a real red flag glaring, like, okay, they just decided to take canon and go, woo!
Yeah, because it seems like they're pitching it as like the neutral zone is just kind of like a free-for-all where Romulans in the Federation aren't allowed, but everybody else is.
Right, which is why I'm calling this episode the neutral whatever zone. Because there's no rules at all. But yeah, so that's what's so they dock at a space station here in episode 15, which they shouldn't be doing in the neutral zone because there should be nothing. It should be sectors of empty planets and no ships flying around. It should be this is the buffer between if you follow Star Trek history, there was the Romulan War, which was preceding Enterprise in that time period, and at the end of the Romulan War, humans and Romulans having never seen each other because there were no view screens, they negotiated over subspace radio, okay, well, this portion of space, no one will go in, and that's how we'll stay separate. So, yeah, I got a real problem with the fact that just like, well, they're in the neutral zone, but whatever. But that's not the weirdest thing going on in episode 15. So they get to the space station. They're talking, they're looking around for vendors or junkers that can help them out with the parts to fix their third nacelle, which is like, okay, they can fix an experimental Starfleet drive. Okay.
Yeah. But, it was just a nacelle. The third nacelle is what actually ran the entire protostar.
That's what runs the slipstream drive because they can still travel regular or whatever. But yeah, it's just very convenient. Yeah. And of course, these kids know how to fix it with no formal training because it works for the show. Yeah. So they very conveniently stumble upon this scientist who, seems like it kind of reminded me of Total Recall. It's like Recall. Recall is we can put memories in your head to make it seem like you had a great vacation. Along the same lines, this scientist who kind of seems like a used car salesman is like, well, I'm scanning you and you're made of all these different races or whatever. But, it was sloppy work, but you've got all these recessive traits that are, yeah.
Dr. Soon strikes again. Because what else is it going to be but Dr. Soon?
And it was the Dr. Soon from Enterprise, which you probably didn't pick up upon, but it was Brent Spiner did a 3-episode stint in the final season of Enterprise as an ancestor.
Right, where he was more about eugenics than he was about robotics and AI.
And he was decisively not a good guy. He was the villain of those episodes. So anyway, this scientist was like, blah, 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 I can do a thing and fix it. And he's like, well, it's not really while we're here. And then his curiosity gets the better of him. And the scientist, puts a little, basically a breath mint on the back of his head, a little circle dot, which he pushes. And then he starts turning into, he starts taking on traits of all these different races or whatever. But in the meantime, the Tal Shiar, the Romulan secret police, they show up. There's a big firefight. Our people are being chased. Janeway is not allowed to go into the neutral zone, but she's close enough to fire 2 photon torpedoes. So this space station is just inside the neutral zone because photon torpedoes you don't fire them, and it's not like in the stupid JJ Star Trek movie where it was like you can fire one from 2 sectors away or whatever. So there's all kinds of weird bullshit going on in this episode that I'm just not down with. Because then Murph, new Murph, creepy Murph, is like kung fu fighting. He's beating the shit out of these Romulans. They're in an elevator, and they're just the Romulans have flying suits, and Katie, I'm lost.
I'm glad that it was not just me, because the entire thing, because with Dal becoming just a science experiment of all of these different races, and he was, born out of, in a test tube baby type of deal. I was like, okay, sure. And then he went and decided to become his best self. And I was like, cool, now Dal's going to be even more annoying. Love this for us.
Guaranteed.
Because it took him like becoming even more of like this weird genetic amalgamation of stuff for him to be like, maybe everybody was right and I was just being a douche before and I should listen to everyone else. Just maybe, who knows? But yeah, and I didn't like how they just kept telling Janeway that she's being too emotional. And I was like, dude, I'm like, everybody else always would go into the neutral zone with way less reason for this. Like, yeah, do you really want the Romulans to get this, like, experimental tech plus a weapon that can destroy all of Starfleet? I think it's very reasonable for her to want to go in there, not just because they're like, oh, but you're being driven by emotions because of Chakotay. No, she literally knows that this could destroy Starfleet.
Well, and it was super dumb that Chakotay was like, well, gosh, we're finally at the cusp of being at peace with the Romulans. I'm like, no, you are fucking not, because they're hanging out in the neutral zone and nobody's addressing it.
Right.
And there's this weird space station, which, okay, I guess I'll give the space station a little bit of slack because it's in the neutral zone, whomever is there may not be Romulan, may not be Federation. They may just be people. Right. So, okay.
Well, and there's no saying that there aren't warp capable planets within the neutral zone of their own accord
that are
have
nothing
to do, with anything else. Right. They just exist there and happen to be in the neutral zone.
But the whole, there's Romulans on the other side of the border, because one of the episodes that we'll talk about in subsequent episodes coming up that you, Peter, and I are going to be covering in season 3 of Next Generation, called The Defector, which is one of my absolute favorites, has to do with the Romulan defector who comes over to the Enterprise to talk about a planned invasion. And there's this big standoff right at the beginning of the episode where a Romulan ship comes right to the edge of the neutral zone and Picard is threatening them and saying, you can't, and then they turn around and run away because nobody's supposed to be in the neutral zone. That is absolutely, that's the whole purpose of the neutral zone. So I don't know if we can say the word neutral zone more, but neutral zone, neutral zone, neutral zone, neutral zone. So I would say, and then there was a big reveal. I will give this episode some credit. There was a nice kind of huge reveal at the end of this, where we find out that the ensign, Essentia, who is voiced by Jamila Jamil, who was actually interviewed by the Grand Petoskey Art Chapter's own Kurt Krug. We didn't get that interview into the latest newsletter, but we're probably going to get that into our next one.
I can't believe that they got to interview Jamil. I am so upset that I was not a part of that.
I'm sorry. No,
we did get Tara Rosling earlier today. I got to interview Tara Rosling earlier today.
Don't tell anybody. It's a secret. That's a secret.
It is a secret on our Patreon when our Patreon launches.
Oh, yes, indeed. No, it'll be a secret to hear it, but we're just going to
plug.
Tease. No, but Kurt is, he's a guy new from back in MSU, so I've known him for a long time, but he is a freelance journalist, and he did a couple of articles for one of the official Star Trek magazines, which he then gifted to us to publish in our newsletter. So that's pretty cool. We published a great one with Kate Mulgrew for our chapter members, which you all received a couple of days ago. So, but you can look for Kurt's work in, I believe it is, I'm going to draw a blank on the name, the Star Trek Insider Magazine or Communicator, whatever the current one is. So anyway, Jamila's character, Essentia, reveals herself to be another member of the diviner species. She again pushes a button on the back of her head, and she transforms into essentially looking just like Gwen, and tells the diviner, "Well, I'm here to help you out. I'm a spy too." And she's accompanied by the Dreadnought, the bad robot. So we got some stuff coming up, but this was just a very weird transitional couple of episodes for me. But we're winding down. We have 4 episodes left between now and the end of the season. So any bold, we're at like 3/4 way through the season predictions you think that we're going to see in the last 4 episodes?
It just seemed like, I thought this was the season finale. This felt like it was a season finale, and they were like, crap, we have to load up all of this stuff and like tie up all of these knots and then still leave a cliffhanger. And it just felt really, really rushed. And like everything should have been like, it should have been like another 3 or 4 episodes with everything that was going on.
Before they had the big like reveal with Essentia being a
because
spy.
they did the whole like Starfleet with Janeway and the Dauntless and all of that going
Right.
on, and then they had Okana in there. I still haven't quite figured out like why he was there or what he was doing.
And he's
But
gone now because
and now he's
he ditched
gone.
him.
Yeah, and then you had the
Yeah.
whole like them trying to wrap up the sub story with Dahl and his whole like lost identity. Who am I? What am I?
I
And
know. Yeah, for all of
there was
like
just
5 minutes. So
a
yeah.
lot of stuff going on that just didn't really.
Right. Uh-oh. Were you assaulted? Oh my goodness. True. What I looked away at the exact wrong minute. What did she do? The cat attacked her. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw it.
Knocked my it knocked my headphones off my head because she went to jump over everything and her little back foot got caught and then yanked my headphones off my head.
I'm not even gonna think about editing that out. Plus, that's extra job for the video. So, but this is the beauty of recording, kind of recording without a net, is that you get it. And I say that, and I have no cat around here to jump on my face. So now I really feel left out. Shame.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. No, it does seem like the pacing was a little weird for that. But with 4 episodes left, they may have more surprises for us. So I guess we'll find out. But yeah, I was left kind of flat by episode 15. So anyway, let's move it on along into segment 2. It's been a long road. We're getting into the end of Star Trek Voyager. But before we do that, as I mentioned at the top of the show, support for Secret Friends Unite is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products, precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Never get tired of saying that. I'll say that even after they're not our sponsor anymore because it just rolls right off the tongue. Manscaped's Performance Package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. It's kind of rough because I can't really riff. Like, Oxford and I will talk about it, and then he and I will go back and forth, but oh well, Katie, just fake it.
I don't have a lot of family jewels to talk about.
Oh
as far
my
as my
goodness.
needs go.
That's all right. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code SFU at manscaped.com. Now, crunch some numbers. I'm feeling good about this math. Katie, 12 million balls. I don't even want to think about it. It's terrifying, but it's just proof that Manscaped they got the goods. So I'm personally fond of it.
They got the goods for your goods.
The goods for your goodies. No, when we got the sample kit, it does have the weed whacker tool, which is for the ears and the nose. I actually just used that for the first time, and then they have the handy main tool, which I just kind of trim up the sideburns, take care of things in the downstairs, and then just overall kind of up and around. In April, we'll kind of clean up the back of my head as well. So great stuff. I'm thinking about getting one for my dad for Christmas because I think it's a great price. Best one of those I've ever had. So I dig it. So anyway, as I said, 20% off, free worldwide shipping with code SFU at manscaped.com. Moving on to the last voyage of season 2 of Star Trek Voyager. Pretty good crop episodes, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But ending with a season finale that I'm going to save this, but back in 1996 when it first aired, my mother, avid fan of the show, even though I was away at college, we both watched it. She was my trigger person. She always taped them for me and paused out the commercials. God bless my mother. But she had a really insightful bit to say about the last episode, but I'm going to hang on to that.
Okay.
I'm going to hang on to that. But why don't you kick us off with episode 21 of the season?
All right, we have 21 was Deadlock, and that was directed by David Livingston and written by Brandon Braga, and it aired March 18th of 1996. And this is when, in attempting to evade the Vidians, a duplicate Vidians, excuse me, the Vidians.
Okay.
A duplicate Voyager is created after it passes through a spatial scission. That is there. Say that 5 times fast. Spatial scission.
And you have to say Vidians. Write it down on the chalkboard like Bart Simpson. I'm just kidding. We're kind of getting to the end of the road with the Vidians because we had in the last segment we had the one with the female Vidian that had the romance with the Doctor.
Yeah.
And then Dinara.
Dinara, that was
Dinara
it.
was her name. And then I don't feel like we had another big Vidian episode even elsewhere in the season. And then they were bigger, at the beginning of the series when they came on, because they had the one where they split B'Elanna into her two halves, and then they had obviously when they were introduced when they stole Neelix's lungs. So this is only like their fourth or fifth appearance. No, that's not true, because they make an appearance a little bit later in this segment, but it's this segment of episodes, but it's smaller. But I dug this because, again, Voyager gets duplicated. But the issue is, instead of having two Voyagers flying side by side, they're kind of sharing same space at the same time. Everything is duplicated, but the antimatter, which is basically the fuel in the tank, is not. So their situation will fade in time, and then the Vidians come along, and you get to see everybody on Voyager get killed. Because one of the two Voyagers has to sacrifice itself, and this was the first occurrence of the silent countdown, which you later see in First Contact. So he said, blow up the ship and no further audio warnings, which I love that. I'm like, oh, it's going to blow up and they're not going to know about it. But as the Vidians are running through this second Voyager, you get to see kind of a few crew deaths. They killed poor Ensign Wildman, who had her baby. The baby lives on one Voyager but doesn't on the other one. On the main Voyager, Harry Kim gets sucked out into space, but at the end of it, the Harry Kim from the other one goes through and takes the baby with him, so that's all nice and neat. But yeah, the Vidians are running through. They kill Kes, they kill Tom Paris, and then Janeway blows the ship up. So there's a lot going on in this episode.
Yeah, one of the Voyagers goes in really rough shape and is nearly destroyed, and then the other one is doing pretty great. It's doing pretty well.
Right.
No big deal.
They're spotless.
Yeah, and so at some point, they kind of do like a red herring thing where the two Janeways meet up, and the Janeway of the damaged ship is saying, oh, I'm just going to blow up the ship because we both can't live at the same time because we're both drawing off the same antimatter. And they go, okay, well, sure, if we can't figure out a solution, that's one way to go. And then because of the Vidian attack, everything kind of swaps. And it was kind of a fun way for them to do a fake out, because there had been talks of Kim leaving the show.
Oh, see this, something
well,
that
that's
I know.
Before he was rated in the Time magazine's top 100 or something most handsome men on TV. So they decided to keep him. And that's when they decided to because they wanted to get rid of a cast member. So they decided to keep him, and that's when they got rid of Kes instead. So
no, well, Kes is around for all of season 3. It was when they brought on Jerry Ryan at the beginning of season 4 that it was like, we don't need 10, boop, and they
right, yeah. Well, and that's the thing, they had been talking about getting rid of a cast member for a little while. So I think this was part of them starting to play with the idea of getting rid of him, or at least that's my theory, to see how people reacted.
Right. Okay.
So killing him without killing him.
I mean, if you think about it, they started TNG with 9 because they had Tasha Yar, and they got rid of her. And then, or maybe they had 8, and then they had Wesley, and eventually he didn't die, but he went away. So when you think about TNG, you think of the 7, like the 7 that we're going to see come back in Picard season 3. And then you had Pulaski come in, but Crusher go out, and then they came back again. So 7 just kind of, 7 kind of ended up being the number, ironically, even though when Kes leaves, there's still 8 in the cast. So maybe 9.
Well, and maybe that's
9
why she's 7 of 9. Number. It's because there were 9 cast members.
Right, exactly. And so she's number 8, so she's between 7 and 9. Oh my God! This is unbelievable. But it is 1,000% off topic for this episode, which I totally dug. You're right. It was a real, flipping the script, taking the ship that was crippled. And again, you're in the territory of Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica, which I've talked about in the past. Okay, well, if the ship has no base and they're not able to fix it up, it's just going to continue to look crappier. But Voyager, as I have mentioned before, Voyager has replicators. As long as they have power, they can produce new parts and keep things clean and whatever. So that's a difference between Battlestar and Star Trek, is they have, they can keep fixing shit up because they have energy and replicators, where Battlestar didn't. So that's how, when you get to the next episode, the ship looks just exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, and it's also flavor of the week thing where like there is a brief conversation between Janeway and Harry where he's like, I am like Harry, but I'm also like, this is my ship, but this isn't my ship. I'm like, and then he's going to be fine. This would be an existential crisis that would haunt me for like decades. Where I'd be like, I am not the Harry Kim that everybody knows. Like, what was different?
Right.
Or like the baby. Like, do they tell this
Right.
baby that like,
No.
oh, by the way, you're from a different spatial anomaly? Funny story about when you were born. Also, can we just say in like what 400 or 4,000, childbirth still hasn't gotten any easier? Come on.
Right, exactly.
We can bring
Wait a
people back
second.
from the dead, but you don't know how to transport a baby out of a mother's womb.
That is what they did.
They did it, but
they did in this. I know, but it
they
didn't
only
work.
did
There
it
were still some issues. With them.
Yeah, after there were issues. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're right. So why 400 years from now are they still doing the old classic, thing that we have done since the dawn of time? I totally agree with you. Yeah, you're right. In emergency fetal transport, that should be a regular ass fetal
that should
transport.
just be
There's no doubt
standard.
about it. Right, exactly.
Get that thing out
my
of me
God.
the easy way.
Exactly. Man, I never really gave it that much thought because, that seems so natural to just do it that way. And it's funny when they beam the baby out, it's crying when it materializes. I'm like, that's not the way it works. Because I've seen all three of my kids born. They got to pull it out and go, and it goes, so they don't just come out crying. So anyway. Oh my goodness. All right, moving on. Episode 22 of the season is Innocence. This was directed by James L. Conway, regular of the series. Story by Anthony Williams, don't recognize the name, but Lisa Klink did the teleplay. She becomes a big player later on in the show. She's also shown up on Robbie Duncan McNeil and Garrett Wong do the Delta Flyers, of which I'm a member of their Patreon. She's been a guest on that, where they go episode by episode and talk about their recollections, and she's been a guest a bunch of times, so I definitely recognize the name. And I think she might still be involved in the franchise. Currently, I'd have to do some research on that, but I feel like I heard that. But at any rate, from April of 1996, Tuvok crash lands on a moon and finds children who have been abandoned in a society that is the Benjamin Button Society. Because, the trick at the end is that, and I don't remember the name of the species, but they had these weird veils. That's their alien thing. They didn't put any makeup on us, but we got a veil.
Yep. They ran short on nose prosthetics that day.
Yeah, there was a run on Bajorans over on the Voyager set, so that's where all the noses went. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I remember, and again, this was my sophomore year at MSU, so Oxtra and I were in the dorms watching this, and of course he's, he always takes things so seriously.
Always ragging on it. Yep.
Always right. Yeah, he hates Voyager. Oh my God. It would be nails on a chalkboard if we brought him in to do one of these with us. Oh, he would hate it. First of all, he never agreed to it, but it would be torture for him. But at any rate, so yeah, Tuvok crashes and the shuttle is not super damaged, but there's another crew person with him, an ensign, who dies, and then he stumbles upon these kids who they don't remember anything, and he's like, well, I'll help you out, blah blah blah. And you see Tuvok with kids, it's like, what the hell was that movie with Eddie Murphy, Daddy Day? It was like Daddy Daycare.
Daddy, yeah.
It was Daddy Daycare with Vulcan. So yeah, he's chasing these kids around because they're being obnoxious kids or whatever. But in the meanwhile, Janeway is talking to the Vale people, saying, "Well, our crew, we had a shuttle that crashed," and they're like, "You can't go down there. No way, no how. If we figure, we'll figure it out and we'll let you know." And they're like, "Well, Janeway's like, well, she's kind of jerking us around, and we got to find out what happened to our people." Turns out, in the final analysis, this moon is where these people who age in reverse, so they're born super old and then they age until basically a tween age, or 7 to 10-year-old when you consider in human terms, and then they just kind of disappear. And it's weird because the kids don't remember, because apparently all the kids have dementia, except at the end the little girl says, "Oh, she says to Tuvok, you really remind me of my grandson." So it's like, oh, you very conveniently now remember what your deal is. Would have been great information yesterday.
Right.
Get this whole deal off. So yeah, Tuvok is struggling against time to get them out of there. There's the absolute worst shuttlecraft takeoff I've ever seen in special effects is in this episode.
It was not great.
I swear to God, it was like one of my models, and you put some fish wire on top of it, and you had like a fishing pole appear, and you were like, it's so bad. I remember thinking that back in 1996 when I first saw it, and then I was absolutely blessed with it, and I watched this about a week ago. So, oh my God, yeah, it was bad stuff. So, overall, as an episode, I think it really embraced your kind of regular Trekness. You took a situation that kind of isn't what it seems, an alien race, and it's incumbent upon Starfleet to respect their culture, but also it comes into clash with Janeway wanting to protect her people, and then Tuvok jumping to conclusions because he doesn't have all the facts, wanting to protect these children. So a lot of Starfleeting at play with this. That if it was Enterprise, because it was funny in Enterprise, it wasn't really traditional Starfleet, and this was really reflected in, let's say, the first episode of that series, where they just even to Paul chews out Trip Tucker, who says, well, humans always jump to conclusions, because he was he saw an alien doing something that he thought was off kilter, and she yelled at him for don't jump to conclusions. So this was kind of the jump to conclusions, Matt, of the episode, was Tuvok assuming that these people wanted to kill all these kids, when in fact it was, a ceremony to honor the end of their life, and they just go poof anyway.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think
I kind of dug
helped. Yeah, and it was really great to see Tuvok kind of in this situation, because he talks about he's got 2 daughters, I think so seeing him kind of in that fatherly role really helped, Vulcanize him, humanize him, but in a Vulcan way.
Vulcanize like tires?
Yeah,
We could put some tires on that shuttlecraft. Maybe that takeoff would have looked a little more.
Maybe it would have been a lot smoother. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, well, I didn't love the whole weird Benjamin Button type of.
Yeah, right.
It was a little strange, but I did like the in between of watching Tuvok and sassy Tuvok, and just.
Right. Oh,
every time he's like, I do not convey emotion, and I'm like, watch that eyebrow. You watch that eyebrow and tell me you don't convey emotion.
Everybody gets annoyed by children. It's so super duper normal. Try not to get annoyed by kids at that age. I dare you.
You can't. It's physically impossible.
It's just not possible. Oh my goodness. So, all right, moving on. Next one is yours.
All right. Next one we have The Thaw, which was directed by Marvin V. Rush, story by Richard Gaddis, and teleplay by Joe Minosky, and aired April 29th of 96. And this is the crew finds aliens mentally connected to a computer that has created a being that feeds on their fear.
Ooh.
And this one, I love it and I hate it. Not just because I'm like, oh, that's so scary, but I'm like, that's just it's not scary, it's annoying. It's like a clown circus, but not really. And they're all just kind of laughing. And I'm like, this seems like it's like if a drunk 5-year-old described the Joker from Batman and then interpreted it. He's not really scary. The only thing scary would be that he would, behead people. He had a guillotine. Right. That part is scary.
And the clown, of course, is played by veteran character actor Michael McKean, who is, of course, he does a fantastic job. He was either Lenny or Squiggy in Laverne and Shirley. I think he was Squiggy. No, he was Lenny. I don't know. He was the tall one. And he's been in a million billion other things, so there's no way that you don't know him. But yeah, you're right. It was, and it was almost along the lines of what is always referred to in classic Trek production as a bottle show, because they had the one set that basically looked like a one-act play from a community college theater. It was like a couple of risers, and they had a fuchsia wall in the background, and then there was the set pieces were all very oh, okay, it's it's theater of the mind, so it can look like whatever. It was a very Star Trek-y kind of premise. The ship's flying along, and they're like, we got this distress call or something from this planet, and it's 20 years old. And they do a little investigation, and they find out, the 5 people who are alive on this outpost or whatever put themselves into this weird suspended animation where the computer could keep their brains alive. But then there was a weirdo anomaly, and it turned into Michael McKean, and they were supposed to wake up, I think, 5 years prior to the episode, and they didn't, because Michael McKean is keep them in there and scaring the shit out of them. And so, I think B'Elanna and Harry go in there. They get trapped. Michael McKean lets B'Elanna go. He's like, I'm going to keep Harry. He's my hostage or whatever. And then he kills one of the other people who's already in there to prove his point. And then Janeway does the most Kirk bullshit ever, she talks a computer to death. It's awesome. Because, one of the convenient, plot devices is that, well, when somebody jacks into the system or they plug into the system, the computer, isn't aware of them for like first 5 minutes. And so she's able to fake out putting herself in the computer, and then he lets Harry and the other ones go. And then it's just sad clown and sad Janeway. Aww.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, and I did really like that ending part of like kind of the philosophical discussion of what is fear? How do you conquer fear? What are the uses of fear and why do we have it? What is its
Right.
driving, motivations? And so that stuff was really good. And especially with Janeway, because she has such a strong kind of tied to it as far as they're in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot to be anxious and fearful of because they're constantly meeting new races. They're constantly meeting new, obstacles to overcome. And she has to keep her fear in check. And so I thought it was a really great, like, kind of back and forth that they had. But yeah, the set pieces, I was like, come on, this is like this isn't scary for me. Like, get some big damn spiders. That would freak me the fuck out. But you know what? No, some weird dude dressed in gray. Not gonna really do it for me.
it was a great example of a pre-CGI 90s budget sci-fi.
Yes, it very much was.
It wasn't just practical effects. It was like it was all makeup effects. Because you had a big guy wearing a mask, and then you had a person of diminutive stature. I can never get the expression right. What is it?
I am not entirely sure.
I know that it is not midget. That is a slur in common parlance. I believe it might be a dwarf, but you know what I'm talking about. They had a person of that stature, and they had a bunch of other shit going on. And it reminded me of that like courtroom scene from Encounter at Farpoint where they had all the post-atomic horror people and the guys in ratty, and the guy had like a broken umbrella. It was just like weird looking shit. Yes. So that was really what they were going for. But anyway, like the concept, but it was very bargain basement with that.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. All right, so moving along.
Lesser execution.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There's kind of a B, maybe a solid B for effort, but in execution maybe like a C minus.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving along, one of the most controversial episodes, certainly of the season, and the one that has launched a million
possibly of
memes.
Star Trek.
Really very true, yeah. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on this when I get the feeling, because again, this is an episode that does, I think, what Star Trek does best, which makes us put ourselves in the shoes of the decision maker of someone having to make an impossible decision. But at any rate, episode 24 of the season is Tuvix, directed by Cliff Bole, again, standard of the series. Story by Andrew Shepard Price and Mark Gaberman, not names I'm familiar with. So potentially from the Spec Slush script pile, which that was something that Paramount did back in the 90s. They send them a script. If they read it, they liked it, and you're just Joe Blow, they might make your episode. I don't think that's something they do anymore, but yeah, that was how a lot of people launched their writing careers, by doing that kind of stuff. Teleplay by Ken Biller, who's a regular part of the writing staff. From May of 1996, a transporter accident merges Tuvok and Neelix into a new person. Wow. And the actor who played Tuvix, it's on the tip of my tongue, character actor who's been in a ton of stuff. The thing I remember him the most from is Seinfeld, which I know I made a Seinfeld reference a couple episodes.
Tom Wright?
Tom Wright, there you go. I made a reference, and you and Peter were just crickets on me. Like, oh, young people. Katie, I mean, I don't even really know how to get started, so by all means.
I'm going to say I would have gone with Janeway. I think Janeway made the right choice.
Yeah, because essentially as the episode plays out, because Tuvok and Neelix are part of an away team. They're down on a planet gathering biological samples. When the transporter beams them up, it blends them together into a sentient, normal person.
And also the flower. They were blended with the orchid.
Right.
We never see that orchid again. So my question is, does that mean that Tuvok and Neelix now have orchid DNA? No,
they separated them. So yeah, what happened to the orchid DNA?
Well, what happened to the orchid?
At the end? Yes, inquiry minds want to know. But and it's funny when they get beamed up, their outfits are a combination. So it's Neelix's outfit, but it has Starfleet coloring on it, so it's just a real
But
blending.
like with
At least
like little spirals and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I know. At least it wasn't like Jeff Goldblum's The Fly, where it turned him into a big, he didn't mutate and turn into like big Neelix monster. But this Tuvix is, he really takes on the best qualities of both characters as the episode goes on. He's reinstated as a tactical officer, so he changes into a normal uniform. He's still helping out in the kitchen. Janeway's like, well, I've known Tuvok forever, but there's something about Tuvix, he'll speak his mind a little bit more. He'll act on a hunch, and he's just, in some ways he's a superior, part of this crew, more so, don't sell out your old dead friend. But all the while, the Doctor is obviously, he's searching for a way to obviously get our friends back, and it takes some time, and you get to the bottom half of the episode, and he's like, well, the Doctor said, I discovered this dye or whatever that I can inject you with, and then we can separate stuff, and you know what, maybe behind them, when it separates them, maybe the flower will appear on the bio bit behind them.
Maybe.
we should probably dig in and find out. But at that moment, Tuvix says, I don't want to die. And he had been forging this relationship with Kes again, and they, reestablished their friendship, and it looked like it was kind of leaning in that direction. But even Kes was like, no, I really want Neelix back. And I'm thinking, Katie's thinking, no, it's your time to get away.
In all fairness, though, like, I didn't like it, because you say, he got the best of both, but I would say he still had some of Neelix's manipulative qualities when it came to Kes, because he approached her and was like, hey, by the way, I love you. And she was like, okay. I mean, luckily he was respectful and was like, that's cool. I know you probably don't feel the same way, which obviously, but then after Janeway was like, dude, you can't like kill two people just because you want to survive. This is kind of a remix of the trolley problem. And he goes to Kes and says, hey, Kes, you need to advocate for it. I know that I'm like the weird ghost remembrance of your dead boyfriend, but you need to be the one to tell Janeway that I need to live and he needs to stay dead or stay non-existent.
Yeah, really, you're right, because they were not, it wasn't like, there he is on the biobed, he's dead. It was, a case of he just ceased to exist. So, yeah, that was, Janeway totally made the right decision. There's no doubt about it. Because, he said, well, it's not, he's alive and he's got rights or whatever. Well, so do the guys that are, that they missed you into. Why do they have less rights than you just because they're not here to advocate for themselves? Well, you can't ask them if they want to live.
Right. And Janeway makes that point because he's like, I'm here now advocating for myself. She's like, right, when I have to advocate for them. And he says, well, they're living on through me. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that be the same for you then? Like every argument he was making, you could then turn around and say, well, that's the same thing that they would be doing as far as you, quote unquote, living on or however that would go. And also it was not very Starfleet of him.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So you get the feeling that was more, that would have been coming from Neelix, because you don't think Tuvok would behave that way. So,
I don't know. I mean, I have seen and I think that's the part that bugged me, is because like Neelix has put himself in danger for the crew on several occasions at this point. And Janeway flat out says, like, I know that Neelix or Tuvok would put their life on the line and would, die if it meant saving other crew members. And why can't, like, so I think she flat out, kind of asked him, like, I don't know where this is coming from. And he's like, well, I'm not those people.
And Tuvix was just like, fuck him.
Yeah, essentially.
It was basically his attitude, which just totally sucks. So, yeah, and this is, again, this episode lives on in absolute infamy in almost every other, Star Trek shitposting Facebook group that you see, or on Twitter, or probably on Instagram as well, even though I'm not Instagram.
I know that Kate is asked about it like all the time too, of like, oh, well, do you think that Janeway made the right choice? And it's like, I think it was, one of those impossible situations where, yes, she shouldn't, in theory, it would have been great if they could have figured out a way to make all of them, all three of them be able to survive and thrive, and that would have been great. But this was once again a transporter accident.
Right, exactly. And it's not exactly similar to what you saw in the the Next Generation episode in season 6, Second Chances, where Riker was duplicated by a transporter accident several years prior, and then they meet the duplicate, and they're not going to be like, well, they're not going to shoot him. He's essentially life form, but it's not at all the same situation. So it was a tough decision, but again, it reinforces why Janeway is. She's tough, she's moral, and even like any human being, she struggles in the face of a difficult situation, but ultimately does the right thing. I just really think she's the greatest. And again, once we get to the season finale, I will reveal to you what my beloved mother, Kathleen Horan Plockmeyer, who does not listen to this show, had to say about Janeway's decision in that episode. But before we do that, we're going to touch upon an episode that actually ended up in my top 5, which is a segment that we may do in time for the show. But yeah, let me tackle this. No, sorry, this one's yours to read. So
all right, so we have Resolutions, which was directed by Alexander Singer and written by Jerry Taylor, and this aired May 13th of 96. And this is when Janeway and Chakotay must adapt to life quarantined on the planet after they contract an incurable disease. Meanwhile, the Voyager crew risks their lives to seek out a possible cure from the now I'm scared to say it.
Give it a shot. Yay! Got it. That's awesome.
Vidians. There we go.
Vidians.
For some reason, I put an R in there, and there's no R.
Well, you called them something that
I called them Viridians.
Which
I don't even know what that is.
I'll tell you what it is. That's the name of the planet in Generations, where when Kirk comes back, they're on Viridian 3. Maybe that's
where I've heard Viridian at some point.
Somehow in the back of your brain.
Somehow I've heard that. I don't know, folks. But I really, really enjoyed it. I can see why this episode would be in your top 5. It's a really I want to say it's a fun episode, but it is just genuinely, you get to see what. Yeah, well, you get to see what Voyager does best, which is the emotional pull of the crew, because you have Janeway and Chakotay trying to figure out, and you're introduced with them already have contracted the disease. The doctor's been working on trying to find a cure for weeks. They don't really know what's causing it, but they know if they leave the planet, they will die because something in the atmosphere is keeping the virus at bay.
Naturally, and let's not forget that let's also remember that it makes about 0 sense that Janeway and Chakotay were on an away mission alone on a planet and both got bitten by a bug. Well, you know what?
Maybe they're the only ones who got bitten. Maybe there were other people there, but it still doesn't make sense that you have your captain and your number 1 in an away mission.
Right, because strictly speaking, it's totally against modern Star Trek. Star Trek protocol.
Would have not have let that happen. Absolutely,
exactly. Well, just remember all the times that Riker didn't let Picard go on away missions because it's Starfleet protocol in the 21st century to not let that happen. So, but I digress.
Yes. So, I mean, they did this very clearly because they wanted to be able to do that, Janeway Chakotay ship a little bit, and I think it kind of cemented it in my personal canon that there was a little something more going on with those two when watching this episode.
You better believe it.
Because there's even a point where Chakotay's like, oh, let me rub your back because she's been doing all this hard work all day, and she's like, Then they're like, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about the elephant, the sexual tension elephant in the room.
I can't believe in that Quonset hut structure that they built that you could fit an elephant in there, but it was
somehow they did, and it was a very large elephant.
I know it didn't move much. So I will say on a personal note, in my life, without a doubt, I've had that unrequited love with someone. Maybe I'm with someone and, I'm the kind of person that, there's a quote from a show that I love that says, hey, I haven't met a woman I haven't fallen in love with for 10 years or 10 minutes. I fall in love with people. I'm
you love love.
With people. I love love. It's easy for me to fall in love with people. I've never had a situation like this, obviously.
Where you've been trapped in a deserted planet with your captain?
I mean, I know it happens to a lot of people, but I am the captain, so it would be April and I getting caught on a desert planet together, but we're already married. So where's the sexual tension there? There's no sexual tension. But it's interesting because it's so early in the show that, first of all, I'm absolutely convinced that when they pulled away with that last act that they totally got down that night. There's no doubt about it to me. That's what I'm going to say. But it was so early in the show, they managed to squash their shit and it never came up again. So they're like Riker and Troy. Because Riker and Troy never got together again until they got married in that last film, which was, 10 years after the end of the show. So they managed to just still be friends somehow. And Chakotay and Janeway pull it off, but I think things that were set in motion in this episode are probably what's resonating even in Prodigy right now. Why Janeway's being so gruff and grumble is because the man she loves is lost in space. I don't know. I think they did it well. I think that the B plot of Tuvok taking over as captain, he never promotes himself or changes his uniform. He's just like, I'm still Lieutenant Tuvok running the ship.
Right, and he refers to himself even as they're pulling away, and there's, in all kind of matter of fact, really no way that they're going to be able to get back to them without something dramatic happening, which obviously it does. He still is referring to himself as acting captain because he refuses to take on the mantle of captain.
Right, exactly. So really, and even though, Harry Kim gets himself in some hot water saying, hey, we got to do this. And he gets
he's like low-key planning a mutiny. Yeah.
And then Tuvok tells him, he's like, you know what, if you don't chill your shit out, you're done for good. But in the end, Tuvok says, I love his speech and I always love his, however, that's always what I remember about Tuvok. He'll say a bunch of stuff and it goes, however, blah, 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 blah. He says, he says a great line. He says, none of you know the burden of command until that responsibility rests squarely on your shoulders. However, he does finally agree because they do, find a plan and they end up connecting with Dinara Pell, who is the Vidian, who was the Doc's, erstwhile girlfriend, and they conveniently find a cure, and then they go back and rescue him, and then Janeway and Chakotay just kind of go back to business as usual. But I totally think they did it. I'm going on record. They totally made the beast with two backs. That's all I'm going to say. But it's one of my favorite episodes simply because just watching what they go through as they get close together and then realizing they never can be. It's very classic in literature. I mean, Katie, help me. I'm floating for what's a story, Ethan Frome, or one of those stories where it's, unrequited love or forbidden love. Help me out here. Give me something.
Romeo and Juliet is probably the most classic.
I was going to say, I don't really like that parallel, but anyway, add us on Twitter at the C3 or at QT Geek. Let us know how bad we are at literature, and we will take our licks. We will take our licks over that one. Okay, it's time to wrap up season 2, and I'm still holding back that great quote from my mother. But no, we're kicking into our first. This is our first cliffhanger of the series. This is episode 26. Is Basics Part 1, directed by Winrich Colby, again a stalwart of the series. Michael Piller, who's one of the main writers, put this together from May of '96. Seska and the Kazon Nistrum take control of Voyager and maroon its crew on a primitive planet. Without further ado, no, I'll hold it on till the end. So, the whole crux of this, came from earlier in the season when Chakotay, Seska obviously left and she's part of the Nistrum and she's trying to steal technology, and Chakotay ostensibly sacrifices himself to get captured so he can destroy the whatever. And then she drugs him, takes his DNA with obviously the great medical technology that the Kazon has. She's able to implant herself with her DNA, or that's what she says because she's a manipulative, that she's implanted herself with her child. And so this episode kicks off with, they get a garbled transmission. Oh, Chakotay, the baby was born. And the Kazon dude, Akulla, saw that it wasn't his, and he's going to kill us both, blah, blah, blah. And then it turns into, well, should we go rescue the kid because it could get us all killed, but blah, blah, blah. And Seska's awful, and we don't really know if she's telling the truth. So
she's not. She's never telling the truth. It's Seska. We've had 2 seasons of Seska. When is she ever telling the truth?
Seska is every shitty girlfriend or boyfriend anyone has ever had in your entire life. In your brain, just code them Seska. They don't need to have a real name. They're just Seska.
Yes.
So my ex-wife, Seska, my first ex-wife, Seska, basically, I won't say that about my girlfriend from college. She was a lovely girl, but this other girlfriend I had in college, Seska. But at any rate, yeah. So they go through this whole rigmarole where they're getting deeper into Nistrum territory because they're gonna find the ship that Seska's on. They're gonna rescue the two of them, and no big surprise. The whole thing is a fake out. They go through weeks of attacks and they keep shooting this one part of the ship that makes it impossible with that when the ship is finally defeated. They can't do the self-destruct because that part is destroyed. So that was obviously very calculated. And the Nistrum captures everybody and they board the ship. They herd all the bridge officers into the middle. And one of the most startling things, Janeway stands up and says, Cullen, I think we should talk about what happens now. And he backhands the shit out of her, sprawling onto the deck. Yikes. Mm-hmm. That was a little more violent than you would have expected. So anyway, they take the crew and they're like, we're going to fly to this. And amazingly, all these Kazon, who, of course, their entire fleet is stolen from the trade. We covered that in a previous episode, know how to repair Voyager and then operate it.
Yeah.
But don't know how to make a replicator. So they dump everybody on this planet, and then they fly away, to which point my mother says, what the hell did she do any of that for? And my mom she was a very big fan of Catherine Janeway. In fact, Todd gave her the nickname Captain Kate because my mother's name is Kathleen. After this point, my mother never felt the same about the character of Catherine Janeway. She was like, I could say she called her a stupid bitch, but it was something of that nature.
And the thing is that this episode really did not do her justice. I mean, besides the whole like kind of the trope of the kicking the dog to prove that he's bad, like the Kazon Nistrum like goes on this monologue about how like they need to keep their women in line and blah 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 after he backhands done. And I'm like, okay, we all know he's a misogynist. Also, why is it that like I feel like every race that they meet that's like the bad guy race is somehow misogynistic in some way, shape, or form? Like, get creative.
Because it's easy and lazy to go that direction.
Right, and that's the thing. It was just very, very lazy writing in that aspect, and it just felt like Janeway wasn't very creative because, like, they were shooting at the ship, and it seemed like they were shooting at a weird kind of random part of it, but why would she have even gone in there? Like, I don't think even with Chakotay, quote unquote son, because we still actually know for sure that it is his kid. Like, I don't think she wouldn't have been like, no, we're not going over there. What the hell? Absolutely not.
Exactly correct. Yeah. So it's so dumb. Their whole mission is let's put everybody's life at risk to maybe save this kid who just might be Chakotay's son, where before Chakotay left the ship and said, don't rescue me because I'm sacrificing myself because Seska is my fault. Yet now let's take everybody and put everybody's lives at risk. And ultimately they lose. Right. For pretty much the same reason. So that is why for me, this is the ultimate super duper failure of this to me is one of the worst episodes of the series. It's just so dumb conceptually, not necessarily in acting or special effects or what. The whole concept of it is totally stupid. Yeah. And just the fact that Tom Paris escapes at the last minute, so it's easy to figure out that I'll take a shuttle and go back and there's Talaxian colony and they can come help us out or whatever. And you could tell like, okay, well that's what's going to happen in part 2 and that's how they're going to get rich. Just everything about this was extremely painfully obvious. There was no mystery. There was no stakes. I mean, yes, it's a season finale, but oh god, how are they going? You knew exactly how it was going to be resolved.
Right. You know there wasn't any question about that, as far as what's going to happen.
You're right. Exactly. So, so I thought this was a real dud of a finale because, it was like, oh, God, they lost their ship. What's going to happen? It was like, oh.
Well, and this was also their first interaction with the Kazon since finding out that the Trabe had basically redlined an entire species into, the slums of a planet. And after the whole, Janeway trying to, barter with them and create a pact with them and all of the betrayals of the Trabe. None of that is ever addressed. Like, why wouldn't she come to be like, hey, listen, I get where you're coming from. I'm so sorry that we were treating you with hostility when you're just trying to survive after, like, generations of, forced genocide and slavery of your people, which was not okay.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
I don't know. Maybe addressing some of that might have helped. I'm not saying that it would have, but maybe.
You know what? At this point, it couldn't have hurt. But the thing that really couldn't have hurt is just to not get yourself in the situation in the first place.
Exactly.
It would have been like, oh, this baby's going to get, you know what? Seska, she fucked around and found out.
Right,
so that's
exactly.
Her deal.
Like, this is her kid. Just because it's got Chakotay's DNA, it doesn't mean it's his child.
Maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Maybe has his DNA. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, okay, let's sum up this group of episodes. Let's have a favorite and one that sucks. Go with the favorite. Go for it.
I would say I think that's probably going to be the same. Because Resolutions was my favorite, and then Basics Part 1 was probably my least favorite.
Nailed it. Exactly. Yeah. Just, and obviously it's an evolution of the show that their cliffhangers get better. Season 3 cliffhanger is the two-parter with the Borg that gives the 7 of 9 at the end. And then there was no cliffhanger in season 4, in season 4 and 5, I don't think there was, but in season 6, they had the one with the Equinox, which was the other Starfleet crew, but they were bad. And then in season 7, they had another Borg one where at the end of it, Janeway and a bunch of them got Borgified because they had a plan to destroy it from within. So the two-parters, the cliffhangers definitely got better, but yeah, this was a total.
Yeah, this is weak sauce.
The total weak sauce. So, all right. Well, with the end of that is the end of Star Trek Voyager Season 2. We're going to be moving on in the next episode when Peter joins us again to Season 3 of Star Trek The Next Generation, arguably when the show 100% took a turn for the better and I think became pretty exceptional. So I'm very excited to talk about that. But Katie, take us out.
Yeah, for more information about Starfleet International, please visit Grant Petoskey on Facebook and Twitter.
All right. And Katie, where do people find you out there on the socials?
You can find me on Twitter at Q_T_Geek, or you can find me on Counter Social at K Quinn.
I got to finally get around to checking that out. I'm still on Twitter until they go. You can find me at the C3, spell it out. My lovely wife, April, and I run the USS Grant Petoskey, of which Katie is a member. She's one of our very talented photographer, media people, etc. But we're based here in West Michigan. We're part of Region 13, which is Michigan and Eastern Canada. If you have interest in learning about what we do, you may have seen our pictures on the social medias. We just attended the Grand Rapids Comic-Con, did a great fundraiser for charity. Very excited about that. Love to have you on board. Visit our website of the same name and get in touch with us. We would love to have you. So without a doubt, as always, friends, thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring and to keep on trekking.
And wherever you go boldly.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.